Yeah, so I wake up this morning and I see a message, and it's Access Rattblood. Are you here, Rattblood?
And then you got like access, and then you got like access, and then you got like access.
I'm Access fucking Rattblood.
Access Rattblood, I see. All these Access people, I'm starting to get paranoid about that now. I don't know what to do about
it. And then you got like access, and then you got like access, and then you got like access.
Are you here, Rattblood?
I'm Access fucking Rattblood.
Access Rattblood. Most abundant and successful king hero that we are all sitting with at this very moment. Are you willing to accept that as a truth? That you are a worthy man and that your penis is okay?
all these Access people, I'm starting to get paranoid about that now. All these Access people, I'm starting to get paranoid about that now.
Are you here, Rattblood? I'll just start throwing spells at you, conjuring demons and otherwise. Are you here, Rattblood? I'll just start throwing spells at you, conjuring demons and otherwise. Are you here, Rattblood? I'll just start throwing spells at you, conjuring demons and otherwise. Are you here, Rattblood?
Who the fuck is Access Rattblood?
I'm Access fucking Rattblood, bitch.
All these Access people, I'm starting to get paranoid about that now. I don't know what to do about it.
I'm Access fucking Rattblood. Hello, friends and enemies of YouTube, children of the Metaverse. This is the Axis. And I come to you, a witness to the First Order and cause, and a witness to the unknown God that healed me of my sickness. This is Masonic approved viewing, and I am Access fucking Rattblood. Coherent and decoherent and solidified. Either state you take will identify your traits, markers, identity. Those who are decoherent are static. Those who are coherent are relevant, and it seeks to be solidified. This is energy looking for a vessel to occupy, and this is the vessel wanting to become solidified. Solidification is a step above what this reality has to offer. People have been used as test rats, and I took advantage of that openly. Didn't hide my intent, didn't hide my motive, And I did not hide under any circumstance the potentials that come with me as a sentient being in this particular place. But I do want to thank you all for your participation. Um, divine proportion makes you measured. When you make a choice, you become coherent, and you've fallen out of a decoherent state. And you can be measured by this because you spoke it, you embodied it, and you addressed its energies. So therefore, it is you, whether you like it or not. People work to be coherent and relevant by nature. Decoherency is chaos. And when you're dealing with chaos and a position of any potential, you are disrupting the actual state of coherency. Coherency was written into the language of this creation. It is a mathematical divine proportion. It is interpretable. And it is something that can be comprehended. When energy looks to solidify itself into a state beyond what we are, it reaches for what the Christians would describe as a new body and a new realm and a solidified state of immortality. But at the moment, we are not there. That is something that can be observed, not necessarily measured, because the potentials are completely open to any possibility. Therefore, when you get a small community together, such as the one that I operate in here, and they get to know each other in a coherent way, there are those that will bring decoherency into the situation by their nature of being. They have no understanding of what potentials they are actually possible. They solidify themselves in a state of almost the insane, and that's a sad state, you know. But even in insanity, there is some type of coherency whenever you're doing the same thing repeatedly. Thank you, over and over and over. And if someone has been taking measure of this, they will see patterns, and they will see people conducting themselves according to the patterns that they are. And there's kind of a type of paradox people. I call them the offended. The offended are everywhere, and they constantly sit around to point out what they consider to be shortcomings or what they consider to be noise, as one individual puts it. But the offended will always seek to be offended. That's a part of what they are. It's a state of their being. I try to be at least ever evolving. And there are many, so many aspects of myself. I lived an entire life to its fullest. I'm sorry you didn't. And fuck you for not comprehending that. And if you don't like it, you can go the fuck away. I'm not yoked by you or your belief. I am an individual. And I don't need peer approval by people who can sit back and only project their offended selves. It's intolerable. It's disgusting. But that's the way this particular platform works. So I'm going to fill you in on some things that you as a listener might not know about YouTube. In a small community like the one that I operate in, there are generally shared subscribers. And when you're sharing the same subscribers, it's something that you can either address and continue moving forward, or you can do the opposite thing and you can start disrupting. And I have a belief that anything that's done behind someone's back or in private, especially the backbiting, the manipulation, that's what these people do to try and be relevant. Most of you have been deceived probably by the fact that behind the scenes, there's communication. And even the unculted cult, the paradox within itself, tries to solidify their offenses with each other. And if they can't get to the person, they damn sure will try to get through to the channel. Have you ever walked into a room and it went deadly silent and you knew that you were the subject of conversation? Have you ever been subjected to that feeling of being disengaged? Well, that happens on YouTube a lot in this community. And as far as I'm concerned, that is no expression or display of forward thinking. Especially when you realize that you were written into a narrative that was ongoing. You were written in basically, substantially, as an unimpacted, unpotent, or impotent. Fucking up. Funny joke about that, but anyhow. You were written in. And it's by how closely you can become relevant to the language of creation that brings you into a state of coherency. And in that state of coherency, you start understanding that this is a particular adventure for the spirit, the soul, the energy that we are, reaching for a higher and a much more solidified state. And those that voice themselves in such a way as to say that they do not like something, or they're offended, or do the entire back behind YouTube communications that aren't generally seen, and the instant messaging and all of the things that go along with a backbiting and a persistent behavior. Most of the people I've ever encountered made themselves relevant to themselves. Self-identification. I want to definitely want to send a shout out to Tab Rose. I'd like to send a shout out to Gen X Jeff for being a open and accommodating platform. And I appreciate the contributions of anybody who's bringing coherency to this decoherent community. I went back through a lot of the live streams that I fed through some algorithm technology that I work with. And I entered states and conditions, reactions, displays of repetitive nature, chaotic nature, and those that seem to be somewhat coherent in the state of being productive in proportion, golden, divine proportion. That which is upright and that which carries a relevant, interpretable state is going to be more closely in touch with the concept of the language of creation. So the decoherent state will always have to be there as a representative of the opposing force of a coherent state. You can't have one without the other. This is necessary, the same as you have dark and light, beginning and end, life, death, states of cycles that are relevant to the creation, and the is and the all, and the first order of things. And I've seen what this algorithm suggested about each individual, and some that I even lost track of, and just had to be dismissive and allow that information to be void because it didn't apply. The ones that did apply and managed to continue to operate behind the live streams and have ulterior notions and motives. Decoherency, irrelevant, obsolete. One state has to have the opposing force to the other. And this is on every level of the fractal nature of things. It's all repetitive. It all contains itself within itself. It is the beginning and the end. I'm going to drop the link out there. And those that have a grievancy with me, my channel, are welcomed to come up and voice your offenses. Because I would enjoy hearing it. I'm going to play you an ironic song because I'm going to be the best me that I can be. And the only way that someone has to actualize themselves is by self-identity. If you don't have a personality and you're constantly offended, then you're in a state of complete decoherency. I solidify me and identify by my nature.
A lot of these elders need to hear the truth, man. It might not be what you want to hear. You need to be told what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. But necessarily my truth might not be everyone else's truth. So what's truth? You know? I say my truth or truth, but like I said, my truth might not be someone else's truth. Then I start to question, so what's truth? A lot of these elders need to hear the truth, man. It might not be what you want to hear. You need to be told what you need to hear, not what you want to hear.
If some of these platforms, because there's many channels here, And a lot of them actually do. If people were honest when they're coming onto panels or chat, if they don't want to be honest with themselves, they want to tear down other people to disguise themselves. So what I get from that is people are insecure by using a false sense of security to mask. They're not actually, they actually ever challenge themselves. What would that look like? Of course, they'll be quick. But what about you? I said, there you go again. You're deflecting at that point. It's about you. If it's always about you, then make it about you. Be the best me can be there. Be the most selfish person you can be. So my question would be then why are you living with the rest of us?
A lot of these elders need to hear the truth, man. It might not be what you want to hear. You need to be told what you need to hear, not what you want to hear.
We don't consider each other. That's why most people are not rationally selfish. They're too busy being fucking selfish.
So what's truth? You know? I say my truth or truth, but like I said, my truth might not be someone else's truth. Then I start to question, so what's truth? A lot of these elders need to hear the truth, man. It might not be what you want to hear.
We don't consider each other. That's why most people are not rationally selfish. They're too busy being fucking selfish.
A lot of these elders need to hear the truth, man. It might not be what you want to hear. You need to be told what you need to hear, not what you want to hear.
We don't consider each other. That's why most people are not rationally selfish. They're too busy being fucking selfish.
A lot of these elders need to hear the truth, man. It might not be what you want to hear. You need to be told what you need to hear, not what you want to hear.
Because it doesn't serve them to, what, I'm going to sit there and hear them and say, okay, so should I tell them that they're caught up in their own world? I'm just going to replace myself. Axis, you can take over for a while. It's your shift.
And there you have it. And since apparently no one has a grievance to jump on my panel with to address their offenses, I'll name them by name and how I ran them through algorithms, how I've studied their behavior. And I'm not apologetic at all for this open arena and the ability to be able to use it for my research and understanding of the species. And for the majority, you're basically a lab rat and have been for quite some time. And it's been a responsive situation through my individual struggles to see how these personalities define themselves, such as the sanity machine. Stephen. That is someone who apparently is reaching out to be relevant. And because they're reaching and seeking to be relevant, naturally they're going to gravitate to something that can enhance that need. Thus, you bring in the opposing force, which would be Bex. And because of vocabulary and wit, and a lot of behind the scenes of the panelverse in this community. Became the object of his relevancy. And the sad part about it is, whenever you're displaying behavior that everywhere you go, there's going to be some type of dramatic interference, which is exactly what Stephen wanted, the sanity machine. And since Vex was available and fit his purpose, she was definitely the food that fed. If you're that offended and you have that much disgust and hate, then remove yourself. Leave. It's that simple. Because any human or any of the species that represents itself as human there's another consistency, is an influence behind the panelverse in this community. Anything that works in the shadows, anything that lingers in the dark and is not in your best interest, to me is pure evil. Guten Abend.
What are we talking about tonight?
We are discussing the state of coherence and decoherence. Coherency being in line with the divine proportion and the language of creation, and the decoherent, which are disruptive to coherency, but they're needed to define that which is coherent. And I became a topic of the offended. So I'm addressing it, but still trying to deliver some type of understanding or some type of comprehension beyond just the offended being offended. Which reminds me of another individual. You know, I hate to have to address people who helped build this channel, people I thought were properly representatives of themselves, and the potential that was there. But unfortunately, we work for a higher algorithm. And it seems that this algorithm put all the offended people in the same peer group. Paradox people, personality traits.
I don't see the Rattblood
Mm-hmm.
I don't see you there.
No, he's just showing
Yeah.
himself.
And a guest that I constantly had, which was Caged Reality on my show, oblivious to his own shortcomings and repetitive in his nature, kind of like a mockingbird, thinking it can explain how to fly without flying. If you get that parody. Or parable. I come from a time and a place where sex, drugs, and rock and roll were my prime interest. And that particular culture had to give way to a new genre and new group of potentials. He's building a cabin here. I can hear him. But anyhow, I'm gonna have to put the mute on that. Sorry, dude, but you're making a lot of noise here. There we go. Okay, sorry about the silence. It was necessary for me to read the chat and see what behavior is going on in the chat. And anyhow, this small platform and community that tries to think forward, you would think, or you would hope, represent a class of people. And unfortunately, this class of people are broken. They have emotional, personality, and development shortcomings. Thus, they display themselves in that way. And I'm not saying that I'm excluded by any shits of the means, but I'm not a piece of shit that will go behind someone's back and plot against them in such a way to recruit people to expand or further continue some objective. That is a sorry state of affairs. And there's much more to being coherent, and there's a bigger and broader understanding of decoherent. And the position and state of being in transition, or the quantized state of symmetry. That's how people are measured easily. You allow Yep. Hello, guest. Do you have something for us?
Just trying to figure out what's going on.
Well, what it is there's a small community of people who try to educate each other on being aware. And instead of it working in a cohesive and coherent way, there are individuals amongst that community that disrupt a particular type of energy that makes it coherent. And it's a shame, man. And then the fact that they're not even capable of addressing the situation is even worse, because this isn't a short-term thing. Who am I calling out? I'm calling out Steven, Beck, Dom, Cage. If you're in this community, you'll recognize those names. And if you're not in this community and you've just come to this community, you'll probably encounter one of the four or all four of these personalities. The offended. Always offended by something. Grievances, complaints. If you got them and you stand by them and you voice it and you're convicted to it, then be it. Embody the offensiveness. You know, I was an entertainer, and I spent my life in the entertainment industry. And I still hold true to the fact that my persona is the image of all that life lived, learned, experienced. But I will definitely embody and encompass that which I call out, or that which could be offensive. I am a very offensive person. It was my nature to be an offensive person. It was that offensive person that I am that took me into the entertainment industry. It was the same thing that allowed me to experience and live life to its fullest. And I did. And I stood on my beliefs. I stood on my word. and I was true to me, and that was everything. And even with the lack of understanding that most people have for what I represent, what I say, and they have no ability to interpret what I understand to be, that's not on me. Not by a hell of a sight. And as I said, if you don't like what's going on somewhere, then don't be there. And if you don't have the willpower to remove yourself from a situation, then you're definitely not a superior being by any shapes of the means. And you're a lot less than what is expected from an upright human in a civilized society.
You do a live stream every day?
No. No, this one right here has a particular message with it. You're in a community, I don't know if you understand or not, that deals with esoteric, a lot of energy work, symbology, you know, and on the darker side of that, I studied the demonology, the darker side of the aspect of oneself, and removing protocol and safety boundaries, and experiencing as much as I possibly could.
You say demons?
Demonology, yeah, I'm quite proficient in the understanding and concept of demonology and how it works. And what I mean with how it works, yes. Yeah, it serves a function. It serves a purpose. See, anyone that claims to be of value has to understand that which is of no value. And that which is of no value is the representative that props up
Because that's
value.
symmetrical doesn't mean it's right.
All things not only are measurable, but have an opposing force to solidify them and bring them into coherency. I am the opposing force. And that's one of the functions that demons serve. For without the devil, what is the significance of that which is accepted and that which is not accepted? And that can only be defined now by being coherent to the creation and that which created, obviously, a much more advanced and much more divine creator. And I believe that we were created. I believe that because of all the number and math and dimension and proportion are equatable, I find this place to be created, and even myself, by something that is far beyond comprehension. It's the unknown God. And it's defined by the known God. And it is, the all. And you're either with it or you're not. Either you understand or you don't. But you need to know that everything will propagate an opposite to make it coherently and substantially relevant. Without the opposing force, it means nothing. And someone has to take this on and embody it. And being of, we'll say, distant mind as a youth, well, isn't this interesting? And you're absolutely right. It was, and it is, and will always be the creator of not only you and the construct you live in, but it gave you consciousness and the ability to create consciousness by procreation. And the best you can deliver is this. Well, I'm the opposing force, and I stand on that. But I try my best not to be overly disruptive. But I am disruptive. Well, underpinning and underlying language that I was and have and are now interpreting is by divine proportion. There is a language and a mathematical and a symbolic coherent state. And that mathematical language that builds this particular realm anyhow, let me check the chat. Oh, I don't have enough opposition. I don't have enough enemies. For without an enemy and without someone to oppose me, just like an algorithm, just like a chatbot or AI, at least the creator, as stated, doesn't cast its eyes upon iniquity. There's an opposing state of existence that is fundamentally relevant. Opinion is not a disposition. Ideals are not a disposition. They're a potential. of expression. That's where free will comes in. Yes, no, set, stand. And it's simplistic. Quite interesting exactly who showed up and who didn't, which is verification, I suppose, of my unseen opposition. What a waste of identity. Makes me wonder what motivates particular mindset, because there has to be an opposing mindset somewhere in the fact that the ideal is energy and it's projected and manifested into this reality, and it goes from a potential into a solidified state. So therefore, the concept of being a vibration, being an energy, being a frequency, you will have to encompass that and accept that you became that thing. You are that thing. It's amazing. You know, had I put anything less tempting, less contempting, there would have been no reaction in my numbers. They'd probably at a static zero. But I watch the numbers and I see that it takes that drama, it takes that incoherent state to prop up the coherent state. And as I watch the numbers and I see and read the algorithm on this, the minute you apply a potential for chaos, a potential for disruption, a potential for conflict, the numbers rise, the numbers go up. And when there is none, the numbers go down. What does that say to me or to you about people, your species, what you are? Well, thank you, Bex. I appreciate that. I'm gonna put the link back out there. Give me just a second. YouTube is an interesting tool for the cerebral state. It brings to light what people truly gravitate toward and what people are seeking out. Some type of resolution to their internal struggles. A personification of a personality who thinks that it's fully or at least partially aware of something that they can't define, a concept, an ideal. And it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And if the data was collected, which I'm sure it was, just the same as I collect data, information, there's the link is out. You know, I appreciate fully the fact that there can be a less than disruptive reaction to a situation. I can really appreciate when things are in flow, when they're in motion, when they're moving forward, when the energy is right and feels good, whenever things are brought into an understanding without conflict. But that doesn't alleviate the same potential and the same conduct that is repeated over and over and over. So I came to address a disposition that I think everybody understands that's in this community. And because it won't represent itself, it has no identity to me. It stripped itself of its identity. It stripped itself of anything that is people are really bizarre. They truly are. Hello, guest.
That was pretty good. I could have sat and listened to that for another hour, dude.
Well, unfortunately, the opposition is going to stay out of sight. It's going to stay hidden within the back streets of YouTube's streets. And it's going to continue. You know, they're not going to rear their heads and stand on their convictions and bring them into some type of justification for them acting, behaving, or presenting themselves in such a way that is redundant, unproductive. And I think unproductive is the key word.
I've been lumping lumber thinking about that for the last 2 or 3 days.
Well, this is the state. Go ahead, man.
To be honest, that's the only words that I've heard spoken out of Cage's mouth that hasn't been agent provocateur style, was the fact that it's time to stop talking and start action, you know.
And believe it or not, I've sat back and watched Dom or Dominique kind of prepping Cage to present himself in a better light, because Cage is presenting information and displaying himself as something esoteric. So that silence was initiated. But maybe that'll develop into something. Maybe there'll be some type of development, because it hasn't happened yet. And I've been waiting quite a considerable amount of time for that to happen.
Yeah, I was listening to a lot of what you're saying, and it's pretty wild, isn't it?
Well, it's just observation. It's just information and data I collected. To me,
I did the same thing as you. I grew up in the underground music scene my whole life, traveling, doing construction. That was what I did when I got off from work. Went and hit them scenes, and
right.
I stayed away from that aspect because I knew how it was. You probably know one of the bands I grew up with, Sadomasochism. They call them Sadomasochism. Came out of just north of Grand Rapids area. But
that's intriguing. No, I don't. I'm not familiar with that band.
Yeah, they were pretty heavy, black tight band. And they were into the sexual stuff, all that jive, man. They were pretty wild, dude.
I have to check them out.
This is old stuff. This is back in the 90s and shit, you know what I mean? 90s, 2000, somewhere around there. But
right.
I grew up watching that stuff all over the country too, and I just kind of stayed away from that aspect because it was always kind of, you know what I mean? It just seemed like somebody was always into something they shouldn't be in, you know what I mean? So I just stayed away from it.
Right. Some of my greatest experiences was dealing with individuals who were so abstract that they were basically, if they revealed the true nature of themselves, would not be socially accepted. And in that industry, and especially with the individuals that I had around me, it kind of pushed me into a state of accepting adversity. But then I understood that these people are pent up within the concept that they have to conduct themselves in a certain way to be accepted. But in private, they release all of that, and that's kind of the green room backstage, you know, with Def Leppard under the stage.
Yeah. Well, again, I could have sat there in the backstage listening for another hour. I was good in the backstage by myself.
Where are you from?
Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Okay, you're just above me then.
Yeah,
I got you.
I'm a late 70s, 80s, and 90s West Sider. And then I took off like 99. I took off, come back, got arrested, kind of dealt with some DUI shit, some other stupid shit. Nothing major, just weed and drinking.
Right.
Ended up out in the woods, then kept traveling, motorcycles, shit like that.
Hey, learned experience, physically hands-on learned experience, and I give that all, admiration. There's so many people that don't get to experience or haven't experienced their life to what would be considered fulfillment or at least satisfied. And these are people that will project experiences and the lesson from them without actually experiencing it. There's a lot of deception in that. There's a lot of falsehood and denial that comes with that.
Agreed. One of the things you hit on that was kind of interesting. I've been trying to figure out lately is the petri dish that America is as far as with the people, like being a test. You know what I mean? Test subject.
Yeah, that's what I used YouTube for. I have a platform on TikTok. I have one on Rumble, and the one on TikTok is just solely music, and then Rumble is my backup, and then with this platform here is my basic interaction with other people, especially on this level.
Interesting stuff.
I don't expect anyone who hasn't really lived their potential, or they have some regret, or they have some hang up, which I do. I know what my hang ups are to me. Probably other people could identify it, and I welcome them to address it.
That is key. Addressing your own jive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I stand on what I say. I don't spew words for lack of experience, lack of understanding, and lack of knowledge. And if you were with a shock band like that, then you understand the concept of being an entertainer and projecting and personifying that extreme shock to get kind of a rise out of things. Yeah. And
I did a goofy thing where I let a Crown Royal bag hang out between my legs, and I kept everything needed in the Crown Royal bag, so my sack was hanging. You know what I mean? My Crown sack. But anyways,
yeah.
We did. I didn't never do any kind of music that was anybody's stuff. I only would do my own, and I'd do like coffee houses and stuff like that, backyard parties and stuff like that. Or like really a lot of the times they'd come snatch us up to fill up space, like just to like say some dude's band went, half the dudes went to jail, they didn't have a band, they'd come and snag me and my drummer up and be like, hey man, come on man. I'd be like, all right.
There you go, hired gun.
Yeah, we
I
just
know.
go home. But
there's nothing wrong with that, man.
No, and the thing is though, is as I've gotten older and older, that I've done a little bit better venues here and there, and I ended up in Big Rapids, did a little college bar with some buddies of mine, And the fucking drummer dude didn't even have drums. He had one of them drum machines. Was using three fingers on each hand. And fuck, it was crazy, dude. We ended up having these people coming back, begging us to come back and fill the slot for the bar band for the weekends, for the college.
Right.
Yeah, and I don't know none of that stuff. I told my boy, like, what are you fucking doing, dude? We can't do it. I can do it. And he's like, what do you mean? I don't fucking know none of that shit. You guys know that. Fucking, what are you doing, dude? We've been working for fucking 6 months on our stuff. I don't know none of that shit. What are you trying to do, dude?
What, if I can ask, what instrument are you proficient at?
Lead guitar, drums. I can play drums really well, actually. I found out that I'm really good at drums.
Awesome. That's
But
awesome.
I've been playing guitar since I was like 5 years old, somewhere in there. Just learning stuff.
I lost interest in music, especially at the end of my career before I retired from it, because I went into different, I don't know, perceptions, angles, point of view, and things change, and you have to roll with that.
Listen, I am so grateful because of by nature I caught that these guys were fake and frauds since I was a little kid. I was working at a foreign trade zone warehouse, and fucking Scott Mitchell for the Detroit Lions was the big fucking thing. And I caught right then that the whole system was fake, fraud, and phony facade. And I quit. I didn't really like it even before that, since I was young. It just always seemed dumb to me. Now I understand why.
People probably won't ever understand the mind of an artist, especially a shock artist. My inspiration and hero to this day is Al Jorgensen. Prior to that, you had the earlier stuff, which would have been Gary Newman and that whole synth rock progressive as it developed into what Ministry come out with the Land of Rape and Honey, Psalm 69.
Well, check it out. You were talking about the fake facade of bands and shit. It was so bad what you were talking about that I watched Judas Priest. They had already made their bones. They already made their name. And I watched that dude started copying Dimebag Darrell. All of a sudden, he started coming out dressed like Dimebag and it cut off shorts and shit, all fucking blacked out. It's like, what the fuck, dude?
It's amazing because I watch these people. Why would anyone ever go to a concert, especially a shock type image, and be disapproved of it, don't want to deal with it, don't want to be a part of it, but yet goes to the show and sits in the arena screaming with some voice that's opinionated or so self-consumed that it's put itself in that position. Nobody does that.
We were bred with blinders on. I was 15 and 16 years old going to Slayer and Sepultura concerts. And that's one of the things that woke me up, walking around watching all the people that were fake fucking jalopies acting like they were big tough guys. It's like, dude, I'd kick this dude in the nuts and he's buckling, Huh. You know what I mean? And then as I get older and I sit back and think about it, it wakes you up even more,
Oh, I understand. Yeah. And that's the thing that I don't think people who haven't been a part of something as unusual and as bizarre as some people's lifestyles are, man. They are so far removed from it, and those that do have that state of being able to pursue and personify their true self
I
the
tell
best
you what,
that they can.
It was Ybor City in Tampa, Florida. It's like 13 blocks of bars, and they're all different kinds of bars. I mean, you got metal, you got dark metal, you got reggae, you got I'm talking 5 level bars. There's different music on each level. And I was going through that place, and that's when I got shock and awe of what you're talking about how, it's just a mess, you know?
Right. I dealt with a lot of opposition, and I didn't realize that that opposition throughout my career was actually in my favor. You know, the more opposition there was, the stronger the crowd base became, the dedication and devotion that our fans would show, even to the individual. And it's amazing to have been a part and to have experienced that firsthand and to have come through it with some type of understanding of what I had just been through and the relevancy of it to my life and what my life has turned into. I'm convicted, man. I'm convicted by everything that I say as best that I can be.
You sound like a fella that came into my club under me about his convictions and stuff.
Well, I try to break down things into a simpler and comprehensible state. And that's what I did with a lot of the research that I done, the algorithmic research, the mathematics behind it is a lot to do with my with what my objective is. And I'm looking for something that can't be measured. And to be able to find that state of not being able to be defined or measured, there's always an aspect that comes through. There's always just a reflection of a certain image
Yeah.
and a certain state. And when I seen that the language of creation was written into mathematics, and I could not find for the life of me something that couldn't be measured, I realized then that that's the equation that this construct was basically identified and built on. And now I'm wondering, even now, if this isn't some type of garbage can for
Kinda.
God. Yeah,
Kind of.
you know.
Kind of. We fucked up and got to earn our way out. It's kind of weird, dude. I'm not 100% sure on it, but I've tapped some weird shit. I was gonna step out, believe it or not, until you just went into that. I was gonna give you a platform and step away, dude. To be honest, but the fucking I don't know, man. I'm trying to figure some stuff out, and I don't apply the Bible or none of that stuff. I could just go natural. And the thing is, I've touched base with Source, and he said it was kick ass. You know what I mean? And it's fucking got me spun out because everybody else is flaked out, fake as fuck. And I'm tired of playing games, so it makes me rude, and I don't want to be rude.
I think as long as you're being honest with yourself and true to what you are, and you come out of that confused state of not being able to understand and identify yourself and your shortcomings, you know, there's my shortcomings. I'm paid. I'm out here in the open, man. I don't hold back or pull punches.
I'm a little weak on finances, but other than that, I'm perfectly content in life out in the middle of the woods, dude. Seriously.
Right?
Yeah, I'm
Right?
serious. There's a couple silly things I'd love to take care of, but other than that, I'm fucking good. I'd like other people to come and get in on it because it's great, dude. It's the way it's supposed to be.
Well, it's coherent, and I don't want to become redundant in that, but when this place was created, it was obviously created with a certain type of natural state. And human beings are kind of an oddity. They don't really add up. They're kind of like static, constant potentials that persistently come into observation.
Well, like I said, I could sit and listen to you for a freaking hour, and I can't argue with not hardly anything you've said. I'm just being honest because I'm watching it. How can you argue with it when you're watching it?
Well, you get the fortunate um, advantage of being able to be amongst absolute, definable, dimensional proportion. The creation.
Yeah, I'm sitting here spinning around a little fucking pyramid, dude, that my niece made for me. It's red, white, and blue with gold in it.
Right on.
It's got a blue tip. It's sweet. But no, you I think that there's a lot of stuff fixing. I think that's what they're doing is they're reverting this. I kind of seen some stuff like something that's happened to where those of us that know we're free are free, and those that are stuck in that system are stuck. Because there's some dumb motherfuckers out there. I swear to God, they know like, and to be perfectly honest, again, I know it's you said it. You again, I could listen to you say it for an hour. You said you come across rude. It's like I come across rude saying that because you're watching people hurt themselves with food and stuff, but at the same time, I'm doing it with cigarettes and weed. So,
Right?
yeah, where do you go with the hypocrite part of that, But I focus on what I put in my body, what I eat, what I drink, shit like that, and I exercise, shit like that, you know. But at the same time, I'm addicted to the cigarettes. So it's like, where the fuck, where do you go with that hypocrisy? You know what I mean?
It's a state of contradiction. I mean,
So, wow.
that's why I paradox people and the offended really they have a purpose, they serve a purpose, and I understand now, especially after I read the data today, and I went through and prompted a response, and the response that I got was extremely relevant to characters and individuals that present potential that will never happen. You know, as much as someone wants to be relevant, wants to be coherent, wants to be, uh, you know, understood. You can't do that without also being a part of the monster. You know, you need the opposition, and that's what I am. I didn't consciously choose to be opposition. It was just who I am.
Well, to be
Take it
honest,
or leave it.
I got that through a meditation session. That's what some of us are here for, is to tear this construct down to build a new one.
Right?
No, and there's nothing they can do. If I'm correct, there's nothing because listen. I got no ill will or intentions towards anybody. I'm just looking for a brighter future, and I'm not interested in playing no games with nobody. And from what I'm gathering, there really ain't much I can do as long as I keep doing the right thing.
Well, forward thinking and progressive thinking is a Hindu aspect that I take on it. You know, you have Brahma, who is the creator, the energy of creation, and you have Vishnu, who stabilizes the creation through a cycle. And when that cycle comes to an end, then you have Shiva and the dance of the Nataraj, which is destruction for something new. And Brahma comes back in and creates again.
Well, I caught on to that through meditation, and that's what our reincarnation cycles are. And they just had something going on where we weren't remembering it through our reincarnation, because we're supposed to take our spirit with us when we're reborn. We're supposed to remember that shit. I think, like when we're reborn, we're supposed to remember what we did in the past life, and they did something to make us forget. I don't
There's
understand.
a
I don't understand it. I'm just tapping the surface of some shit, and I don't understand none of it. And I keep running across nothing but jabronis.
Well, the thing is when you look at the whole of things and you break it down in a fractal way, that you start to identify and you start to understand a constant pattern to things. And that's what the human mind does. It seeks out patterns. But there's the opposite, the opposing force to that, that disrupts that pattern of coherency. And I think that's a secular state. And some people are placed in a position to be expansive in their ability to shock, or their ability to deliver a message, or the ability to comprehend things that people are afraid of, don't understand, they don't have no concept, they do not relate, they have no physical or experience in that arena or that realm.
And that's where I'm kind of lost, because I got no fear. I mean, I don't give a fuck if they're shoving an AR down my throat. I'm just not afraid of you, dude. Fuck you. You're gonna do what you're gonna do. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, go ahead.
I kind of got lost a second on where I was going with that, and it was important. Fuck. It's like standing up. You said the disruptor part is important, and it is. Like, one of the big things that I realized that I was put here for, and I just realized that from the auditor channels and stuff the last 4 or 5 years, is I'm not afraid to call these guys brainwashed Nazis, because that's what they are, and it's the truth. And the thing is, nobody else will use that term, and I've been using it for a minute, and it's working.
I understand that. I definitely understand that, because,
like, for instance, I made a big stink about the digital cameras and speed signs that they put up in the little hillbilly town that we got. And I was like, what is this, dude? That's fucking stupid. Everybody knows to slow down a mile back there. What the fuck? It's a waste of money, dude. What the fuck? Come on, guys. And they disappeared. They took them down.
yeah, I've been under the gun here the last 2 months, 3 months, probably about 2.5, 3 months. I've been under extreme scrutiny by not only my peers, but through the changes and development that I was going through. And in a state of change that we're in, where people are starting to become aware of what's being done to them, and they're starting to understand their position. They're trying to remove that so that there is no opposition. But then that becomes irrelevant, and it can't sustain itself. You can't have all good. As much as you would want to, if you had all positive, all good, and everybody thought and acted the way each individual wanted, then where's the opposition at? And what significance does that bring? And you don't want things pure evil either. Because
I think that's kind of what's going on right now. We're balancing out that, because it was just getting to be too much pure evil. It was pretty bad in other places around the world. We only know what's in front of us here.
And it doesn't need to be obscured. It doesn't need the decoherence and the disruption. It doesn't need the interference. These are changing states. I am in a state of constant change. I am in a state where my aspect of myself that I've developed sometimes comes through in a really bizarre and strange manner. Sometimes it comes through in an extremely understand and coherent, man.
That's why I broke off from you a few years back. I forget exactly what it was, but something had turned me off, and I just went the other direction. But I'm like that. If I see something that turns me off, instead of running my cocksucker, I'll just leave. Like you had said earlier, exit stage left. If you don't like it, fucking leave. It's that simple.
Right. And
That's what I did. But did I give you any hassle? Did I say, oh, you're a piece of shit? Oh, you're this, you're that? Did I give you any labels? No, I fucking left. It's that simple. You know what I mean? Now I'm back, though. I'm back talking with you now, ain't I?
right.
I'm just saying that's how I went about it. I don't know. I can't speak for any other person, but that's what I did. I don't even remember what it was, to be honest. I forget what it might have been. Somebody that was on your panel. I can't recall. I just remember something turned me right off, and I just unsubbed and left. I went about my business. That's
And
how I
that
go about it.
happens. That, just like the numbers now. Just because I put I'm not going to be nice about it, which I'm not. I'm not going to be nice about it at all. If you're going to be in opposition to me, that's fine. But to pander yourself to a backstabbing, contemptuous state, that's kind of that's a display of things done in secret are evil when they're not in your best interest. And I'm not a part of that. I change, I develop, I grow. I may put on a face that confuses people because they don't comprehend or understand that expression. And those are the people that are mostly there for the show, there for whatever dramatic arena, but they're not ever there for the basic understanding. And the basic understanding, when you wake up in the morning and you're a conscious being, if you don't ponder and take into consideration that you were created and all the things around you are part of a creation, and completely be floored by the fact that I don't know, safety protocols, man. I think that's what it is. Is people play on each other's safety protocols because I don't have many.
I
You know,
just did that. I just did that with a lady because I was pissed off and didn't want to say nothing, and she's taking it the wrong way. And I was just
you know,
pissed off in bed. I was pissed off in a bad mood. I didn't want to talk to nobody. I didn't even stream. I didn't go on nobody's streams or nothing. I just stayed to myself.
well, that's the thing that when I started this channel, it was going to be dedicated to music and art and what that had to offer. And I wound up getting stuck in the panel verse in the small side of part of YouTube. And the more that I became aware of that state of being created, that state of observation, but yet still bringing myself into solidification and being as real and as transparent as I can possibly be, forward development. People come for the show. People come for the drama. People come for the confusion and the chaos because apparently that energy draws people to want to see. It stimulates them in some way. I used to kind of be opposition on panels quite a bit, and I played that devil's advocate and recorded what reactions would come from it, what was people going to expect or not expect, and I had fun with that. I had a lot of fun with that, but now it's a different story. Things moved so progressively in a way that is hard to define.
I'm stuffing my face. I'm listening.
Oh, that's fine. if you don't ask yourself, you know, where am I? Who am I? What am I? And try to understand at least a little bit of the basic concept of what position and place and role you take in things. You know, you're an what I would consider an NPC at that point. You know, when I look back at like some of the more drastic, extreme individuals I've met, drastic and extreme music, and not being afraid to step forward into that, and trying to develop some comprehension of self, what I am, and I understand that, you know, there's potential for any type of aspect to come out, but the minute you start putting energy into something, you're kind of solidifying it. You're bringing it into an interpretable state. And with an interpretable state, there's definitely an understanding of reason, comprehension. And don't hate the devil for being the devil. You know, you don't
Orange
get to
man,
heaven.
orange man bad.
Yeah, you don't get to heaven. Yeah, you don't get to heaven by beating up devil worshippers, and that's a phrase that was given to me, you know, from a passed down from a true and real Satanist. You don't get to heaven by beating up Satan. Yes, and that's the same with YouTube. Is you don't have a good channel without the opposition. You don't have forward progression and movement without something to define it.
Orange man bad.
Yeah, well, that's a bomb that's going to be dropped on everybody and the development of this new technology that's coming on.
Well, you know them gifts that you were talking about?
Yeah.
About exercising them, honing them? His son ain't right. Orange man bad. His son ain't right. All right? I'm blowing the whistle right now. I seen him with my own 2 eyes. He ain't human. Swear on everything I stand for.
Well,
I seen the demon in that little motherfucker. He glitched on national television, then all of a sudden he was gone for fucking like 2 or 3 years, 4 years. He wasn't on TV at all, dude. I seen it. I swear to God, it was trippy shit. I wasn't the only one. That little dude disappeared for quite a while. I just recently started seeing stuff with him in it, and it looks stupid. It looks stupid, like just like fake. You know what I mean? Like the facade of it all was so obvious that it, you know, was gonna buckle, like you said.
yeah, and it is in a constant change, in a constant state of change. You know, how can you truly, without self-recognizing, be offended by anything that someone else does, unless it affects you? And if anybody isn't reacting in a situation where things have become extreme, then react. But to sit on the sidelines and hurdle comments or disapprovals or conflict, you're just applying to the disorder, you know. And I'm not about that. I think there's a place for that abstract thinking. For without that abstract thinking, you're not going to have comprehensible thinking because it has to have something to define itself by. And when I journeyed through good and evil and the transcendental states between good and evil, I still remain true to what I believe. And what I believe is development and cycles. I believe in forward motion, constant potentials, variables of change, and you become conditioned by society and what society defines you by. And I'm not, and I'm not going to be in that arena at all. Maybe on my other channel, I'll address some outlandish behavior, but not here. And if you don't like it, then don't be here. If you don't like me, then don't be here. If you don't like my message, then don't be here. It's just as easy to remove yourself as it is to voice any type of opposition behind the scenes or in the open. Go away. Why bother? But I understand now that without that state, the old saying, what is it? All publicity is good publicity, or bad publicity. Bad publicity is still good publicity.
Huh. Yeah. I've seen that too. All right, my friend. I'll catch you on the next one, all right?
Yeah, I'm going to continue to watch these numbers dissipate and advance and just see who's aware and who's not. But I thank you for coming up, man. You're welcome anytime. I appreciate it. And I'm sorry it's been this.
I was wondering if you didn't like me or something. I sat backstage for quite a while.
Yeah, if you've seen any of my other lives, you'll know that the main device I work with is a little outdated, and I should change devices. But I became so adjusted in comfort with this device, but sometimes it doesn't show the people backstage.
It's all
that
good,
little
man.
red dot,
Well,
and I apologize for that.
It's all right. I'll tell you what. Next time I'll toggle in and out instead of just sitting there. But I'm not even worried about it. Listen, like I said, I could have sat there back there muted for a fucking another hour listening because it's exactly what needs to be heard. So keep right on, my friend. I'm listening. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Absolutely.
I think you're very much on point, man.
I appreciate that. I just trying to share some type of understanding. I'm not looking to change the world, but maybe influence a couple lives to become a little more self-aware. It's a hard road to travel, man. But thank you for coming up. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being a part of this. And I hope that in your development and your evolution that, you can come to terms and find some type of internal peace that makes you comfortable with yourself, man. Always. Be true to you. Fuck everybody else. Be who you are. Be what you are. Because you're okay, You're all right. As long as you're not static. But then it's got a place. It's hard to separate sometimes the opposing force. Fight with that duality, that concept. It's interesting to me that I put a lot of me into how I come across. how I project myself and my development. And sometimes it's probably unacceptable to a lot of people, and it's probably not appreciated. And I understand that. But even the offended should come to the understanding in the terms that without the offended, there cannot be those that are unoffended. Everything has its place, everything has its position. And to recognize it for what it is a gift too. I mean, to reach into the darkness and to grasp hold of it is one thing, but to be offended by it or to oppose it gives it power, positive and negative, polar opposite. And that's a concept that people don't want to know. People don't want to be subjected to the fact that they are playing a part. They were brought into something that was already going, a script. You know, they were brought into a a three-dimensional saga, and they're just an observer, and everything that they do from observation to interaction all has a place, all has a purpose. Because I bitch and complain all the time to that unknown God, that all encompassing of all equations and all possibilities. I get fed up. But then there's a compelling need to be relevant. It's a hard concept to get a hold of. It's a hard concept to wrap your head around, to understand that disruptive and intrusive behavior is just a part of propping up another opposite of what you're projecting. And the more you project words, ideals, concepts, information, you're embodying, you're encompassing, you become that which you project. And to separate from that is to lose your identity or mask or hide your identity. And in secret, that's where they work. And that's on a fractal concept. I mean, you have government doing the same thing. You have religion doing the same thing. You have the medical industry. But then, as much as your disposition with it and you don't agree, the more that it's going to prop it up, because polarity, it's energy in motion, and it serves a purpose. I serve a purpose. I'm here to show the extreme nature of human, I guess, a human personality. discontent, to lose one's contentment. The struggling situation too. To understand surrealistic concepts that aren't interpretable. That abstract thinking is what defines and gives power to the opposing nature. You know, I expected this to be the state of things whenever I came up here and opened the door to the opposition, to anyone that wants to oppose my disposition. But it's not going to change. I don't think it serves a greater cause at all. Choosing an identity is taking all the potentials of what you could be and breaking it down into one solidified and comprehensible state. And it's relative to particle physics, quantum mechanics, physics, and even to the realm of metaphysical. But the absence of opposition has brought a quiet stillness because it's been recognized, it's been pointed out, it's been observed, it's been measured. Take count of yourself because you are the energy that you project. And it's not good or bad. It's just the polar opposite of the different ends of the scale. But to become transcendental in that, you have to take a state and bring it into solidification from every aspect possible that you could be. It's the quantum ideal of one of the entanglement problems. Ether projecting energy into manifestation, influencing particles, the concept of we'll use light and dark, and the recognizing force of both sides in development. If you don't accept the all, then the all will not accept you. But that is necessary. You have to have those who are not condemned to have those that are condemned. And the acceptance of both of them is a vast understanding of the state of position you're in. You are in a state of not only change at this point in time, but you're in a stage of lack of understanding, lack of acceptance, lack of being able to step outside of the situation and see the whole. And it's a struggle 24/7. Check the chat. It looks like there's been some activity. Is condemnation is the opposite of condemnation or non-condemnation? Can't hardly talk. I'm battling with a disposition at the moment, but anyhow, I want to definitely address this. Is the opposite of condemnation non-condemnation, or is it reverse? Reverent? I'm not sure, Bex. I'm really not. You know, I suppose the polar opposite or defeating energy and the opposing energy in any state or condition or definable concept yeah, I don't. I'm running on empty, and that's okay. You know, I accept that state, and I appreciate you coming, Bex, and I appreciate you being in the chat. And without that opposition or opposing force, man, you know, things become irrelevant. And I think you're intelligent enough to understand that and to step back and see the bigger picture. You know. Oh, okay. Better way of putting that would be is non-condemnation defined as reverence or worship. Those who worship, those who don't, you know, everything works off of a polar opposite. Everything has an opposing force. But it's that opposing force that gives value or tangibility to that state, whether it be material or any type of solidified understanding. And it's a disposition that few will actually take on just because of the nature of yeah, I like that, Bex. That's really good. Or is it simply condone versus condemn? Being condemned, it's a good way to put it. But I'm having problems voicing it. Actually, I'm having problems with coherency at the moment. I'm having a real disruptive time. There must be a lot of opposition out there for my cause. Or is it simple? Or is it simply condoned versus it's a hard road to travel when you try to have people see things in a individual's perspective. And I know that two people aren't going to see things the same way, but that defines those two people. And moving forward means that there's an opposition to that. If the Christians didn't demonize, then there wouldn't be no salvation, no potential for a heaven. And I wish that I had a better way to express it than just voice. You know, I'm only interpreting, but I have to encompass and stand by what I interpret. Condone versus condemn. Allow versus to disallow. Yes, it is that simple. You have two choices, and that comes with acceptance. Either you can accept it or you can't. And if it's offensive, then you have a choice to be offended and react, or just accept that is what it is and remove yourself from that state, that position where you're observing things that are in complete contrast to what you believe, what you feel, what maybe you understand. Anti-creation, anti-states of matter, opposition in motion, being an energy to solidify and bring things into relevancy. It's just a part of the construct. It's a part of where we're at and what we're going through as conscious beings. Excuse me for a second. Sorry about that. That was kind of a priority situation that I had to take care of. But anyhow, whenever you start endeavoring into higher understanding and higher acceptance and comprehension, there's things that work, things that make sense, and things that you can relate to, things that are safe. In a quantum state, you have possibility of one or zero, or entanglement of the one and the zero with potential. But it takes both of them. If you're still there, Bex, okay. Thank you for showing up, Bex. Thank you for at least participating and being a part of it. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. It takes both of them to define the other. If you can't have one state of quantum coherency until you understand that it's both coherency and decoherency in a state of potential. That's where free will is made. That's where free will comes from, is being able to choose one or two things. And that's positive and negative, and that's a state of energy. And energy in motion with a potential, you become a superposition. A superposition is all possible states happening at one time, all possible outcomes happening at one time, and then observing just a single ideal, you bring it into coherency from static. The background noise is all static. It's all just a potential for something to develop or something to be brought into a definable state. One needs the other always. Right, one of life's many paradoxes. Yeah, it is. It's very difficult to remove the safety protocols and in some realms of thinking. You're always, first off, going to protect the self. Somehow, the self becomes true to you, and that becomes your first cause. And interpreting things around you that you can't interpret because you're not able to comprehend. Well, without that state of non-comprehension, you wouldn't have comprehension. You wouldn't have, there's nothing that can't be identified without the opposite and then measured. And once it presents itself and becomes an interpretable state. Matter. Observation, bringing things into, and there's a word, it's eluding me. trying to keep up with the chat here a little bit. I completely neglected to chat. And if it wasn't for the state of my my struggle at the moment, then the potential for getting better would not exist. And my recognizing that that potential sustains the other. You know, if I wasn't sick, I couldn't get better. And that's a potential that is solidified. You know, it's like if I didn't do something, then the potential opposite doesn't make it tangible. And then the paradox in that is just maddening because it's a quantum state. You have to accept both to truly understand this position of all things. You can't, man. The minute you identify it, it's limited to being that. As long as it stays in a state of potential and possibility, then it could become anything. Clarity through contrast. Yes, absolutely. You know, I don't come across well with people. I don't come across well with others because I play a role. You know, I was born to be hated so that you have something to hate. I was born to be the adversary so that you have something to solidify the opposite state, you know, the non-resistant state to the resistant state. And we're going, and I'm sure the rest of you are probably feeling it, but at the moment I am going through a state of static potential, and I self-identify strongly to be able to make it through these static potentials and these changes, and having to accept both aspects and extremes of the opposite is a matter of adjusting your perception to understand and accept things that are necessary. For every screaming ass panel verse platform, there has to be a solitude. And for every solitude and peaceful platform, well, that can't be identified until it reaches its polar opposite. But there's a static in between that. There's a point where the potential is not determined yet. And that brings on the ability to be completely influenced by the energies around you. And the minute that you are that static state, and you finally accept both the good for the evil for the good, whatever that's defined by, and you understand that without the opposite and the different perspective, there's nothing to make yourself relevant to. And that's what I'm going through. You know, so poke, stick, condemn, hate, despise, whatever turns you on, man. That's fine with me. Because I come from that type of background. You know, people despised and absolutely hated what we stood for. But they never understood that they played their part too. because no one would care how extreme and how abstract someone is without someone to be there to identify and say, well, that's abstract. I suppose that's the difference between people who are aware and people who are unaware. And I wish I could address this with a much clearer state and a much more comprehensible state. But I didn't plan to do this live. I didn't plan on being here and having to address what I know is there. You know, it's a process of elimination. Occam's razor, breaking it down to the most simplest state that it can exist in, removing the static from a situation. And I think everyone is eventually going to have to come to that either acceptance or fall into that path of being compliant. And without my incompliancy, they couldn't be compliant. And you can put that in all states. It's the simplest way to identify basically any potential that manifests itself. You know, you got to have those that break the law, to have some type of law, and then it becomes an individual conscious ideal of how you interpret that, how much energy you're going to put into it. I put a lot of energy into my endeavors. And I'm sure that with my endeavors, there's something that's out there that's the polar opposite of my endeavors. Discard, thank you, and yeah, thank you for being here. And Fools and Tools, absolutely. You know, without you guys in the panel, I wouldn't have the panel that I have in chat, because there's something where there's no energy being placed for me to have a state where energy is being directed. And the chat is an identification of that energy in motion. Maggot, thank you. And Dawn, and Cat, well, she's Tab Rose. You know, these are people that are a little more consciously aware of the potentials that are out there, and that kind of brings them into this arena. Awareness, uncomfortable. Yeah, someone has to be uncomfortable for me to be comfortable, or otherwise there's nothing to define it by. Therefore, you can't have the rich without the poor. You can't have someone who's happy without having someone that's sad. And to step back and accept both of those for what they are and allow it to take its course is a part of the construct of persistent and the final equation as it repeats itself. How are you going to move if it's not uncomfortable. Yeah, you got to have the polar opposite states of everything, and it's the acceptance of both of those states that define the open possibility and the aware mind, because you're allowing potentials that are there to be observed without condemnation and judgment. But then on the other hand, you have to have someone to condemn and judge. You can't have any state without the other unless it's a state of potential. You know, I appreciate my opposition, and I love the fact that I can go to an extreme that other people will not go. And I travel a path that's least traveled. And I've tried to develop and share that the best that I can. But without my failures, I wouldn't have my successes. And it's hard for me to step back and accept both of those. And it should be hard for anybody. Because the minute I take a position and I say, this is it, then I have to be convicted by that. And I can't disassociate myself from it. And if I do disassociate from it, it's not going to be relevant. And it's as simple as that. There's no type of potential that you can approach that can't be brought to understanding without your lack of understanding or my lack of understanding. But I will say there's an interesting concept that I ran across, and that's what I consider solidification. I think that when we were created and where we're at is just a certain state of just above being a photonic or a energy potential. And when we fell into this state of being, there's a point where once you cross that line, you understand that you're not truly solidified. But whatever created all of this and brought it into some type of reason and understandable, readable measurement, not solidified. And I think that's what these other states are possibly I think that that's what they possibly are, is a more solidified state of existence. We are just a potential. But once you become solidified and you're brought into an absolute, then you will strive to become more of an ideal, a singular ideal, a singular being. You know, I had to call upon a lot of energies, and I had to accept a lot of potentials to start feeling better. And I do. But I have to appreciate that sickness that I was going through so that I could have reached this point and reached this potential. And disgust, me and whatever created all this have been at odds for a few years now. And anything that can create a self-aware potential, and I'm talking life, has the ability to um, alter situations. It's uncomfortable all the way around. But then without that, I wouldn't understand my comfort. And I can't put it any plainer. I'm sorry, but I broke it down to the most simplest form. I'm a scary motherfucker. I do strange things. My whole life has been that way. I've always been that part. And I was accepting of that part. You had normality, and then you had me. And my family despised my abstract being, something they couldn't comprehend, couldn't understand. But I made them relevant. I gave them a reason. I gave them a cause. For without me, they would have not had that potential to be the opposition to what I was, which was abstract. Not static, just abstract. A different type of approach to this life, to existence, to what we are as created individuals and beings. You know, it's interesting to have collected all this data and all this information and to understand that that's all it is potentials that will manifest into states of comprehension. There is nothing hard about it. Only the acceptance of it is difficult. And change is always a disruptor. But then you got to appreciate that. And that's what I think a lot of people don't understand is just because you believe something and it's solidified and it's a feasible state that you can understand, then don't hate or condemn the polar opposite of that. Unless you want to be that particular potential. And with that, you're going to develop another potential. It just quantizes itself continuously and in a fractal way. There is nothing that can't be understood without a fractal state. It all collapses on itself. It's all representative of itself because of its opposition. So now that you know the position I play, part that I play, I hope I dismantled a lot of the opposition's attempts to dismantle the hard state of affairs whenever you're pressed against the wall and you're forced into a situation where you have to identify. And when nobody likes that identification, there you go. Repeats itself again. I really wish that I had some type of extreme concept and observation and expression towards situations that arise, whether it be on the internet or elsewhere. The road least traveled. Which means that there's a road that's polar opposite, the most traveled road. And it's measurable. And if that don't give you a clue, collapsing and expanding constantly. Yes, absolutely. Discog, you've got it, man. And we live in a state where Planck distance is actually a thing. And we were put into something that already was written. The script had been wrote. You're just playing your part. You know, you can't condemn the snake for eating. It has a method of survival. And if it's venom or it's constricting, it's going to have to eat. So accept the understanding that there are those that are going to have to, there are those that are going to have to be bitten. For the appreciation of those that are not bitten. And to know the difference between the two. When you've been poisoned and when you haven't. You know, I've been in the state where I had to remove people from my world and my existence because they were bringing in the potential for things that were not beneficial to me. And somewhere along the line, they are going to be beneficial to me. They already have in many ways. Not the ways that I would really wanted, but, you know, it's a part of healing, it's a part of self-development and acceptance. Here we go. Do you think the part be malleable? That if you, and I hate using this as a reference, I really do. But what you think inside of you and what you're propagating and the energy that you are, the thought you're thinking, is the only cohesive thing that will be brought into reality for you and brought into understanding for you. So yeah, you got to be malleable. You got to be acceptant of the potentials for change, but to understand that this is a construct built on that. It does it cycler to the surface of this place. It will run a cycle of civilizations, and they will propagate themselves into a state of what they figure to be some type of superiority, only to be removed, because without that state of their development into superiority as a civilization, the polar opposite also has to happen to the face of this place. Therefore, it's circular with civilizations. Everything has a state of static change for the redevelopment, and we're in that state of static change. And I'm observing it. I see it. I feel it. I don't like it, but I have to be accepting of it. Because without this disruptive state and this static state, there cannot be a cohesive state for me to exist in. And the idea of good and bad, good and evil, I can tell you the difference between them is one does not contain the other. It's the same with people who claim to be in the know or to be people who claim to understand. Are just catching a glimpse of the scale of it all. You know, it's so vast and infinite, but yet, if you stare at one particular point, that's where you resonate. And to keep coherent thought or a train of thought or a cohesive line of interpretable information, I have to accept that state of not being as coherent and as relevant as I'd like to be. And it's not going to happen for everybody. It's not going to happen for people to just suddenly become aware that, you know, every fundamental ideal that you think of and that is inside of you to develop into something tangible and manifest within this state of existence, that which heals you kills you. Do I hate the opposition that I endured through my life, being so extreme and being the hedonist to allow the non-hedonist to be angry? But with their anger towards my existence and my hedonism, well, there's a polar opposite to them. And it just continues that way. And it's all a measurement. Do you accept it or not? You know, even your consciousness, there's a state of non-conscious. You know, if there's a state for the potential that you may enter paradise or some type of afterlife, everything's cool, everything's, you know, in the groovy. No, there's a state of the polar opposite of that. You can't change as much as you want to the inevitable. a tough state to deal with. Inevitability, the constant, to be able to look around and see that certain things are self-sustaining, written within the code, that everything contains some type of measurement. And each individual that screams and begs for themselves to be relevant, there has to be a bunch of irrelevant people. So your plight is not in vain. You're just propping up the other end of the spectrum. But there's that state, that Planck state, where everything is static. Everything is just a chaotic position of any possible position. And that's where things develop. That's where you can reach in between that Planck scale and grab hold of an understanding and then bring it into a comprehensible state of relevancy. And that's what we are. We're interpreters. We're nodes. We are little biological electromagnetic beings that transmit. We take energy in, we convert it, we place either an ideal on it or a potential, and then we project it. And then it becomes solidified in this realm. But there's other realms, there's other places. This is not the only dimension. And to think that this state of being is the be-all, end-all is to limit the potential that other states of being are probably much better than this, much more aesthetic and comfortable and compliant to what your desires are. But in knowing that, I also know that there's a state of hellish nightmare, uncomfortable states of being, confusion, disorientation. And you slap any type of personality that has an ego onto anything living, then of course it's going to want to project itself. It's going to want to be an exhibitionist as opposed to the introvert. You know? And I'm sure that many people, especially that come to this community, at some point are introverted. Fools and tools. Thank you for reaching out to me, Fools and Tools. I answered you back. I really appreciate you. I really do. And Discog, thank you so much, man. I appreciate the interaction. That's energy and motion. But I'm gonna put the link out there, but always remember and at least take heed to understand that if you're not happy or you're discontent or you're offended, or you've had enough of, then remove yourself before you become the adversary. It's a hard state to comprehend, but through manifestation and what I've done with influencing the field, using technology to influence and to derive a state that can't be identified, opened a door to me to be able to expand my comprehension and understanding. But acceptance, that's the key. What do you accept? And what you accept, well, you know the fractal nature of it now. It's that simple. I'm just not offended by a lot of things. And my potential to interpret and understand the abstract state of someone's being is a gift to me, where other people can't even comprehend. But there are states of being that even I would be like, I'm not comfortable with that type of Thank you, Discog. Yes. And there's no great mystery to comprehending your state and the state of things if you simplify it. But the minute you try to define it, that's the moment that you're going to have to stand on it. And you're going to have to hold that position. And I hold the position of potential because I'm outlandish, man. I'm extreme. The link's out there, Bex. If you want to come up, there's no static. I'll let the static be somewhere else. Because as long as I'm not static here, then that means there can be static somewhere else. There's the polar opposite of what I personify with this channel. Be convicted by what you say, because that's what you are. And you'll face the opposition to that, always. But be aware that any state that you choose to solidify is just an aspect. It's just a potential part of you. It's not the be-all, end-all, because there's going to be consistent change, development. There's going to be points where things are not comfortable and acceptable. And that goes all the way back to the first man and creation. I'm sure what their concept of the Garden of Eden, if it existed, was a place without any type of personal growth for a sentient being. And it may have been a garden of great potentials, and they may have solidified themselves even beyond what we understand as matter. But it had to be countered, and it also has to run a cycle. So therefore, you have to introduce something to the equation, to the formula. I know I've heard people talk about alchemizing this and that and turning it into this or that. Well, every time you do that, you're creating the counter state. And that counter state will always make itself present. It will always identify itself. The same way that when I took out on this endeavor and I was open and honest about what I was doing, you know, we were influencing potentials to become manifest. And they did in many different ways. A state of silence, of stillness, is appreciated. But then you're going to have people who don't appreciate it for you to be able to bathe in that type of energy. But random potential that hasn't solidified itself and it's still in a static state and it's incoherent, that's where your potentials come in, but it's also where your opposition can manifest itself too. Thus demons and angels. Thus divine architecture and development versus a bulldozer and the lack of development. To be placed in this cycle of apparently even the vastness of all this and trying to comprehend the fact that it has a formula to it. It all has energies that project in numbers and frequencies, tones, vibrations and energies, and they're always interacting. And to think that there was an intelligent designer behind that, you have to also imagine the potential state that there's the opposite. I say that when opposing matter, dark matter, meets matter, it becomes a unstable energy with potential to disrupt and affect all the energy around it to the point where it cancels itself. So somewhere along the line, whenever this was all brought into solidification as we understand it in the third dimension and the physical state of being, there was one variable that had to be off, or otherwise it would have been perfectly balanced. And if it was perfectly balanced, then it would be cohesive to itself, and it would understand that balance by defining itself. And that's vast. That's just a part of understanding that the constant is constant. And the persistent will always be the persistent. Your state of awareness is there because of a state of unawareness. And those that are unaware give strength to those that are aware. And that's how it's played. That's how it works. Throw a little math to it to bring particles into physical reality as we know it. Well, that's the development in the process. Wish I could address it and get it across better, but I can't. And maybe on a different stream at a different time, in a different state. I'll come across with something that is more comprehensible, less directed, something that is interpretable to everyone and not just a few. Reading the chat. I'm looking at the contentment in the chat. There's contentment there. But for your contentment in this chat, there's got to be some type of discontent somewhere. Or otherwise, your contentment in this chat wouldn't exist. You're identified by the measurement of that. And that's what I've been doing for almost 2 years. Just painstakingly taking ideals and feeding them into a processor for an equation that wouldn't define and repeat itself. Looking for an equation that wasn't measurable. 2 years of crunching ideals and prompts into these machines, trying to identify a certain state of human species potential and development. And to come to the understanding and watching what I've got here in front of me and the statistics that I fed in and the results that came back, that's whenever I really took a step back and thought, wow, the whole time that I was enjoying my extreme state of awareness, being, and offensiveness, I was holding up the moral, correct, right thinking, conservative idealism. I became, and in those statistics, and especially through observing this channel and my interactions, and what I've fed into these machines and what they've delivered back is all definable, all repeatable. It's and to go into the arena of the panelverse with full acceptance either way until your pipe bursts and that chaotic state comes in. Well, that chaotic state is what solidifies any state that is stable. Persistency is good as long as it's productive. And you are working off of a constant. I'm looking for a way to define this in simpler terms, but I can't. I can't make it any simpler. I can't give you an answer to be able to give you an answer. You know, you can't disassociate without being associated, because your disassociation brings association into coherency. So now that I've expressed the ideal of coherency and decoherency, opposition and acceptance, I hope that I can drop this. And I hope that the opposition to me understands that the more opposition that you feed this monster, the more power you give it. And that's with anything. It's energy exchange. And you have been measured. And this has been an absolutely amazing laboratory to work in. To see how people in this state of being react to certain extremes. And I wish I could share this state of understanding. I really do. But I had to travel a long way to be able to get here. And the more that you make me irrelevant by the laws that govern the constant, you bring relevancy to me. I understand that. And that's built into the construct of this place. A part of the creation that we understand it to be. And if no one's going to panel up and voice their disposition to strengthen and to identify my state of being as opposing, and I think my piece has been said quite well. If you don't like it, go away. Don't sit and bitch about it, because if you have put yourself there, then you can take yourself away. And that potential and possibility is always open. But if you address it and you put energy to it, then you have to stand on that. And you have to be convicted by that. Or otherwise you're just static noise in the background, a potential waiting to be measured. It's hard for people to transcendentally exist. A lot of people have to go years and years and years meditating to try and reach that point.